CM Punk's victory at Wrestlemania 41 is more than an anticipated moment. It's an essential evolution for professional wrestling's most controversial voice. His win doesn't only matter for personal vindication or storyline symmetry. It matters because the wrestling landscape itself has changed, and Punk remains one of the few figures capable of stitching together fractured eras into a coherent, meaningful narrative. His presence unites the remnants of the ruthless aggression generation, the indie boom, the modern mainstream product, and the post-Vince McMahon transition into something greater than a single performer's triumph. In a world increasingly dominated by commercial interests and algorithmic booking decisions, a CM Punk victory is the rare gesture that feels human, emotional, and richly earned. There's a rare electricity that follows CM Punk into any environment. He walks with the weight of the disillusioned, the jaded, the fans and performers who once believed in something more than merchandise and streaming numbers. His character isn't crafted in a boardroom or fine-tuned by marketing teams. He is the product. Authenticity like that doesn't come around often. It's forged in scars, some physical, many psychological. From being the overlooked workhorse during the early 2000s to becoming the voice of the voiceless during the now legendary pipe bomb era, to walking away from the industry entirely due to what he perceived as its moral and creative decay, Punk has always been more than just a cog in the machine. He's the one guy who pointed at the machine and dared to break it. Wrestlemania 41 represents an opportunity to redefine legacy, not just his, but the company's. For years, WWE has leaned heavily on safety. Known faces, recycled finishes, legacy stars returning for ceremonial moments. Punk challenges that safety. He injects tension into comfort, complexity into simplicity. When Punk wins, fans don't merely cheer a result. They engage with an idea. The idea that the most powerful moments in wrestling don't stem from viral clips or influencer cameos, but from slow-burning, character-driven resolutions that leave people talking for years. If WWE wants to brand itself as a company that finally listens, that evolves, that rewards investment, then no result on the WrestleMania card would say it louder than Punk leaving as champion. It's also a referendum on how we measure greatness. Titles in wrestling have always been part prop, part plot device, and part proclamation. Who holds them says something. And right now, there's an imbalance in that messaging. Roman Reigns' record-breaking reign has created a vacuum of unpredictability. Matches have often been foregone conclusions. Tension drained in service of a greater, more mythic arc. But Punk's presence resets the stakes. He doesn't need supernatural backstories or bloodline rituals to captivate. He speaks. People listen. He fights. People watch. A champion like that can change the direction of a whole division, can elevate mid-carders just by sharing segments, and can turn title defenses into legitimate cultural events rather than just contractual obligations. His history with both Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns adds further depth to the triple threat. There's no aspect of this match that feels arbitrary. With Rollins, he shares a mutual respect born from excellence, but also an undercurrent of jealousy, competition, and philosophical opposition. Punk was the rebel who broke the system from the outside. Rollins is the perfectionist who thrived within it. With Reigns, there's an older tension. Punk once introduced him as part of the Shield, but always carried an implied judgment about how the company favored Roman's trajectory. Punk never hid his resentment for how Reigns was positioned, deserved or not. And now they stand as equals in the ring, no longer abstract forces but real men, each with a story to finish. For Punk to conquer both in one match is to resolve 10 years of layered conflict. There's also something poetic in the way Punk has aged. He's not the same performer who once flipped off authority figures or called out management with reckless abandon. He's sharper now, more deliberate. He knows how much this matters. He's experienced failure, rejection, backlash, and injury. He's been told he's too old, too broken, too volatile, and he's returned anyway. That vulnerability, whether spoken or subtle, is the emotional spine of his current run. He doesn't chase titles for attention. He chases them because it's the one thing left to chase. Everything else, respect, fame, legacy, is already his. What remains is the one crowning moment that says, I never needed your system. I made my own. A win here would also be deeply symbolic in the face of modern sports entertainment's commodification. Wrestling has increasingly leaned into external validation, celebrity integrations, cross-promotion, trend chasing. Punk's presence is a counterweight to that. He doesn't pander. He doesn't try to be likable. He exists on his own terms, whether the fans agree or not. In doing so, he brings legitimacy to the idea that professional wrestling can still be art, that it can still be about the people in the ring, and not just the metrics on a spreadsheet. His victory would remind everyone that storytelling, not spectacle, is what turns matches into moments. In the aftermath of such a win, the ripple effects across the roster would be seismic. Imagine the hunger it would ignite. Younger talent who grew up idolizing Punk would now see an open challenge that feels winnable but meaningful. It reframes the locker room hierarchy. No longer are they chasing a champion protected by an empire or one who's split between multiple obligations. Punk would be there, every week carrying the title not as a possession, but as a responsibility. His reign would become the canvas for a new generation of classics, of promos that feel like debates, of matches that feel like consequences. And in doing so, WWE evolves again, not just in format, but in spirit. The stakes are even higher considering the risks Punk has taken. He could have stayed away. He could have rested on his legacy. But returning to WWE after nearly a decade of bitterness, burned bridges, and misquoted interviews wasn't a decision made lightly. It was a leap of faith, and that faith must be met with meaning. If Punk comes back only to lose, only to serve as a stepping stone for the company's preferred narratives, then his return becomes performative rather than purposeful. But if he wins, if he silences the doubters, pins the empire, and reclaims the crown, then it becomes transformative. His return becomes one of the most powerful third acts in wrestling history. Let's not ignore the real-world subtext either. Punk's AEW exit wasn't clean. It wasn't heroic. It was messy, emotional, and polarizing. To many, he walked away, tarnished. But that's exactly what makes this run so potent. He's no longer seen as infallible. He's been broken, both by the business and by his own decisions. And yet he came back. That takes courage. And for him to not only return, but rise back to the top, clean, compelling, and complete. That's not just a story. That's a redemption arc that speaks to anyone who's ever had to rebuild after ruining something they once loved. A Punk victory also provides closure not just for him, but for fans who've been emotionally attached to his arc for well over a decade. They watched him climb, fall, disappear, re-emerge, and now rise again. To leave that story incomplete once more would border on cruelty. The beauty of wrestling is in giving fans what they feel, not just what they expect. And right now, what they feel is hope. Hope that this story ends the right way. That sometimes the guy who told the truth, even when it hurt, gets the last word. That sometimes wrestling is fair. Then there's the very structure of Wrestlemania. It's the place where eras change, where stars are made and myths are broken. Hogan lost to Warrior. Austin passed the torch to The Rock. Daniel Bryan toppled giants. Seth Rollins cashed in to change the trajectory of an entire era. If this WrestleMania is to matter in the grand lineage, it needs that moment. It needs that iconic, spine-tingling shock that lives on in montages and documentaries. And there's nothing that would resonate louder than Punk standing in the center of the ring, drenched in sweat, gold over his shoulder, while tens of thousands scream, not because they were surprised, but because they finally saw justice done. Finally, we must consider what it would mean for Punk personally, the performer, the human being, not the myth or the headline, but the man. This is the last lap. There won't be another 10-year run. Every match, every promo, every interaction has weight. For him to win now means he gets to walk away, whenever he chooses, with peace, with satisfaction, with a sense of resolution that so few ever get. Wrestling is full of unfinished tales, of greats who never got that final exclamation point. But Punk has the rare chance to seize it, to walk into the fire and walk out not just whole, but immortal. For years, Heyman stood as the mouthpiece of the tribal chief, but those who followed his career know that his allegiance has always been conditional. From Brock Lesnar to CM Punk to Roman Reigns, Paul attaches himself not out of devotion, but out of strategic necessity. He seeks out the one who can bend the system, shatter glass ceilings, and mold eras. At one time, Roman was that force. But now, as the bloodline shows its cracks and Reigns leans more into entitlement than dominance, Heyman's eyes have begun to wander. And what he sees standing on the opposite side of the ring is not just a contender. It's the reincarnation of rebellion. It's the return of CM Punk. This betrayal won't be dramatic. It won't be loud. It will be surgical, an incision made at the perfect moment, with the calm precision of a man who's waited years to strike. Heyman understands theater. He understands narrative. But above all, he understands timing. And as the tribal empire teeters under its own weight, as Solo Sikoa grows restless, as Jey Uso charts his own course, and Jimmy floats in ambiguity, the throne Reigns built begins to look more like a prison than a seat of power. Heyman, a student of chaos, recognizes when the king has become a liability. In his mind, aligning with CM Punk is not treason, it's evolution. Punk is not just a familiar face from Heyman's past, he's a symbol of unfinished business. Their history in WWE is complex. Heyman once guided Punk's meteoric rise, positioning him as the alternative voice in a sea of manufactured stars. The bond was authentic, rooted in mutual disdain for the corporate machine and mutual respect for unfiltered talent. That relationship fractured, but the respect never fully disappeared. And now, Punk doesn't just represent the past. He offers Heyman a future, a new era to mold, a new champion to advise, a new kingdom to shape. Heyman knows better than anyone that Punk doesn't want followers. He wants allies who challenge him. That's exactly what Heyman thrives on. With Roman, the dynamic has become stagnant. Heyman has become a servant, a sycophant clinging to Reigns' aura. But with Punk, he can be a co-conspirator again. He can shape discourse, build narratives, and influence outcomes. He no longer has to bow. He can stand side by side with someone who actually wants to burn the system down again, not just rule it. The betrayal itself will likely unfold in layers. It will begin subtly, perhaps a missed cue, a delayed instruction, a look of hesitation during a critical moment. Heyman will sow the seeds of doubt, not in Roman's mind, but in the minds of the audience. And then, just when the momentum swings toward chaos, perhaps when Roman is seconds from victory, setting up the spear to put Punk away, Heyman will act. Maybe it's a low blow. Maybe it's sliding a chair to Punk when the ref is down.